So, how y'all doing tonight? Good? Good to hear. So welcome to our very first community conversation for Mount Vernon's first comprehensive plan in 55 years. The last comprehensive plan this city had was back in 1968. 1968, yes. So, before the Vietnam War officially started. But, so we're glad to have all of you here, and just, as we're kicking it off, more folks are gonna be coming in, but to have this many people just to start things off for this process is really exciting, and we just really appreciate your time, your interest, and your energy to helping create a vision for Mount Vernon. So this process is going to be a very involved and iterative process. It's going to take, in total, about 18 months is what we're targeting. May take up to 2 years, just depending on approvals, some of the feedback that we receive. But we're really trying to look to wrap things up in about 1.5 years, just so we can get this plan rolling. We've waited a long time as a city, and it's time to move things forward. So I'm Planning Community Development Commissioner James Rouse. I've been here since Valentine's Day, since February 14th of 2022, and we've hit the ground running, and it's been very exciting to be here. So helping out at the mic today with me is Deputy Commissioner Marlon Molina in the Planning Department and Associate Commissioner Catherine Mejia. Well, thank you for that. I hope we maintain that positive energy throughout this whole process. But the reason we're doing this, I kind of summed it up when I started, is we call this plan Envision Mount Vernon, because that's what we're doing here. The community is helping to create a vision for itself that the administration, the city council, and other elected officials will help execute along with public and private partnerships over the next 10 years. So what we're aiming to do is to create this vision for 10 years, but laying a foundation for future visions. This is not gonna, we're not gonna solve all of Mount Vernon's issues. We're not gonna grow all of Mount Vernon's opportunities just in a 10-year time period, but it's a starting point. So what we like to tell people is, this may take in 1.5 years, but at the end of the 1.5 years, it's not the end. That's just the beginning. That's just when we have something in hand saying, this is what we want to see in Mount Vernon, and let's try to make it happen. And so a lot's changed since the last comprehensive plan. 55 years is a really long time. Heck, the last 10 years, a lot has changed and a lot has happened. We were still coming out of the recession 10 years ago. This was all pre-pandemic and pre a lot of other things. And so it's time to evaluate where we are, take what we've experienced recently, take what we've learned recently, and share it amongst ourselves to help develop that vision. So what we'll be looking to do over the course of the next 1.5 years is we're doing this in 2 phases right now. The first phase is focusing on the downtown area. Now, we've created a rough map for all of y'all what we see as downtown, but we appreciate your feedback to help hone that vision. And the reason we're focusing on that is because downtown is a place that unites us all. And it's a place to start. If you haven't done something in a while, you want to make sure you do it right. And doing it in a place that unites us all is the right place to start. And also there's been a lot of pressure on what downtown will look like, what can it be? And so with a lot of this pressure, we want to be able to address that immediately. And so what we learn by working downtown, we're going to take and bring to each of your communities individually and work not to copy and paste, not to overlay, but to take what we've learned and try to integrate it into each neighborhood and to create a vision for each neighborhood that will benefit the city as a whole. So it's a really exciting opportunity to have your voice, because downtown is everyone's downtown. You know, there's a lot of people who live here and live immediately around downtown, but it's something that impacts us all. So we welcome your thoughts and your input. So in this first phase, we're gonna have 8 meetings total. You know, 6 community conversations, 2 public workshops. The public workshop's gonna be on a larger scale. The community conversations that we have are gonna advise the larger public workshops. Those are gonna be longer, a little more intense, but that will take us into a draft of the first phase of the comprehensive plan. So over the next hour and a half, what we're gonna do is we're gonna present some information. We'll provide a brief overview of what the comprehensive plan is, answer any questions that you may have. But this is gonna be an interactive conversation. We want your input. We need your input here. And so we want you to consider a few things. What is your vision for the city? Sit and think on that for a second. What is your vision for the city? Because everyone has a different vision, but if we come together, we can find common ground. I like to take a more positive approach to things in that we're here to collaborate, not compromise. Because we might not see everything within our vision, but we're gonna find common ground, and we're gonna take that, and we're gonna create a unified vision here. That is the end goal. One thing I've been saying is it's really important for Mount Vernon to determine its identity and what that means. You know, we are the city of Mount Vernon that is also a suburb of New York City, but you walk around town and we function as a little village. And so at that triangulated intersection, within that, we'll be able to determine what are we, how do we want to grow, how do we want to develop. Some folks have come up to me saying, I like what New Rochelle did. Others say, I hate what New Rochelle did. Then they look over and say, I like what Yonkers did. And there's some that don't. So we got to figure out what's best for Mount Vernon, because growth is going to happen, but how we grow is determined by everyone here, and in the next meeting, and the next meeting, and the next meeting. So also think about what challenges are there, what obstacles have there been that has slowed this growth, has blocked some of this opportunity. And then we can have that conversation how we're going to overcome it, because that's where opportunities come. Because what opportunities do we want to see, and how do we go about getting them? That's what's really important. You know, that's what we need to put our energy in determining. So when we ask you, we have a lot of materials in front of you. We have a little timeline, a little map, as I mentioned, and a lot of pens, notepads. We got some paper on the wall. So take some time. Reflect, gather your thoughts, write them down. It's really important for us to make, to have something to run with so we can coalesce all that information into a document that in the future all y'all can review. Share your ideas amongst yourselves once you have them out. It's really important that we create this dialogue, that we create a good energy within our dialogue. We're not going to agree on everything. Again, we all have individual visions, but we're trying to find the common ground here to move us forward. And at the end, we're going to report back. We're going to gather all the information and report back to the group. And along the way, we'll be paying attention. We'll be taking notes. We'll try to collect, coalesce, synthesize everything that you've told us tonight to put into a report. So at the public workshop, we have something to present to all of you for phase 1 of this. Before I turn it over to Associate Commissioner Major, I want to acknowledge a few folks. We have some more of our staff who have helped out and have attended. Starting in the back, we have our Grants Administrator, Steve Lawrence, Planning Community Development. Brand new, day 2, Senior Planner, Will Highland, who's going to be helping doing a lot of the legwork with Associate Commissioner Mejia, Deputy Commissioner Molina, and I on this. We have Deputy Commissioner for our Assessor's Office, Cranston Johnson, in the back, and some of our elected officials, if I've missed anyone on staff. Oh wait, Shane Brooks back there, our Sustainability Director. And good guy. He's a good guy. And so, and some of our elected officials are here. Standing in the back is Comptroller Morton, who's joined us tonight. Yes. We have Zoning Board Chair Mike Giustino with us as well. Yeah. In the back, we have Councilmember Gleason. Yes. Walking around helping us out is our Finance and Planning Chair for the City Council, Councilmember Poteet. And last but not least, who I would like to call up to say a few words is our new Council President, Danielle Brown.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, everybody. So I want to say thank you all for coming out tonight. Like Commissioner expressed, we're super excited to get a comprehensive plan and process started here. It's taken years, and we're finally at a point where everyone is looking towards the future, on the same page, agree that we need to get this done so that we can get sustainable and responsible development done in our community. And I think it's important that people come out to these meetings. I've invited everybody in my phone. I see a few people that I've invited come out. But we need to get people out to these meetings so that we have input from everyone, right? A lot of people complain about what Mount Vernon is and what Mount Vernon isn't, and this is our opportunity to shape Mount Vernon, right? So thank you all for participating. I'm excited. And if you have any questions, even if you weren't able to participate, if you know folks who weren't able to participate in this meeting, please make sure they come out to some future meetings, email comments in, make sure you're emailing the planning department so they can consolidate all the comments. And yeah, I'm just excited. So thank you, Commissioner, and let me know if you have any questions or anything.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Council President.
Thank you, Commissioner. You could have been anywhere tonight, but you chose to be here, so thank you so much. One thing that I want to reiterate, Council fought really hard to make this a truly public process. So if you're hearing that there's something happening behind closed doors, this is the closed door, right? And we're going to have 8 meetings. So like Councilwoman Brown said, if you know someone that missed this meeting tonight, and I got calls saying that I couldn't make it tonight, please let them know, like Councilwoman Brown said, that there were 8 meetings that we're going to have. So please come out, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Council Member. So we're going to kick things off. I'm going to turn things over to Associate Commissioner Mejia just to begin our conversation this evening.
Good evening, everyone. You can call me Catherine. Very excited to be with you all here today. And before we get started into the meeting proper, we want to review some community agreements. So we know we're going to be, in these spaces together, discussing some exciting and sometimes hard and challenging things. And so we want to make sure that how we show up and engage with each other is respectful. So if you have the agenda in front of you, I'm going to briefly review the community agreements to make sure they're all very clear and use that as a template for our conversations moving forward. So the first is, just be respectful. Again, we know that people have different ideas, perspectives, backgrounds, and that's actually all very important, and we just want to make sure that when we discuss things, even if we don't agree, that we do so respectfully. The second one is step up, step back, and that's really just an invitation to notice your participation. There's going to be opportunities for you to, write down your ideas. There's going to be opportunities for you to discuss what you're thinking, at your tables, and then to share back with the whole group. And so, we are excited to hear from as many people as possible, and that's really just an invitation to share. And if maybe you've spoken already, to then step back to make space for others. And if you're usually quiet at these meetings, consider, stepping up and sharing your ideas, because we want to make sure that we hear from as many of you as possible tonight. One mic. So we literally only have one mic tonight, so that's very easy, but wanting to just make sure that one person speaks at a time so that we can hear everyone clearly. Keep your comments brief to allow for maximum participation. So again, we're going to ask you for your written comments so we can collect as much as possible. But when you do speak, we're just asking you to keep them brief so that we can get as many community members as possible speaking to the full group. And then just be present, right? We have a lot of things going on. Our phones are buzzing, our Apple Watches are going off, and the request is really just to be present for yourself and for others so that we can have a productive meeting tonight. The last two are challenge ideas, not each other. So again, we recognize we're not all going to agree, and that's okay. And we want to have healthy dialogue and conflict. And the request is that if you disagree and want to pose another perspective, to really focus on the idea itself and to be respectful of the person who says it, even if you don't agree with that person. And then related to that is just speaking from your own experience, right? Again, it's really important that we have as many people as possible participating in these conversations, because the diversity of the city is really what's going to make a really strong plan and process. And so we want to hear, from you, from your own experience. So are there any clarifying questions about those agreements? Anything that's not clear? Yes.
I would like to know, how are you informing the public as to what is going on? This is here tonight. Mm-hmm. How did you inform people as to the fact that this is taking place?
So can I come back to that question? We're going to touch base on that when we do a brief presentation shortly. So I'm going to come back to that. Are there any questions specific to the community agreements? The community agreements that I just shared. So we're focused on the community agreements right now. We can come back to that. Thanks for that question. Is there any agreement that we haven't raised that someone wants to add because they feel it's important? Yes.
I just wanted to mention, I'm not sure about we're here, and it's very hard to understand you. Maybe I think it's a mask. So I don't know if they can hear you in the back clearly.
I see some shaking heads. Okay.
So I think maybe the mask, what you're speaking.
Yeah. How is this? Is that better? Okay, great. Thank you for that. Any additions to the community agreements? Okay. Yes. Absolutely not. Does that fall under be respectful or no? Okay. Let's be respectful. Okay. Can everyone commit to using these agreements throughout our conversation today? Can we get a thumbs up? I see some thumbs up in the back. Yes? Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. So I'm going to move us to a quick icebreaker, and then maybe we'll answer the budget question quickly because we were not prepared to do so. So we'll answer that, and then we'll come back to your question about outreach.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Marlon. So, we have a great turnout. We're going to take a minute to take the temperature of the room. We want your neighbors to know who you are, and we also want to know what your experience is in Mount Vernon. So please raise your hand if you live in Mount Vernon. Okay? Please raise your hand if you work or own a business in Mount Vernon. All right? So raise your hand if your family has been in Mount Vernon for the past 10 years. Okay? Raise your hand if your family has been here less than 10 years. Okay? And finally, raise your hand if you have any experience with a comprehensive plan process in the past. Okay, so less hands went up. Do you have any experience with any sort of rezoning or community planning process? Okay, so what we do know is that you have life experience, and that's going to inform what your vision is, what you want to see with Mount Vernon. And tonight, we're going to provide some structure on how you can share that. So, having said all that, let's have some fun.
I'm going to turn it to Commissioner Rouse. One question that was just raised was about the budget for the comprehensive planning process, so I want to clarify that, and then we'll just review a few slides before we get into our activities.
Thank you, Catherine. So we do have a budget. We went through an RFP process. RFP means request for proposals, where we got 4 responses from planning firms who have done this work throughout the Northeast, in New York, in Westchester, in the metropolitan area. We went through a first round of interviews with the mayor and the planning staff. We narrowed that down to 2 firms. Our goal was to find someone that kind of fell in somewhere between, in the extreme low end, 150, but realistically between 200 and 300,000. The final 2 that we chose, we presented to City Council. We sat with City Council and interviewed those two firms, or teams, I should say. And from that, we chose a group led by MUD Workshop, Metropolitan Urban Design Workshop. It's MWBE based out of Brooklyn, New York, who has done a significant amount of work in New York, in Westchester County, and throughout the Hudson Valley. And they are a relatively young firm, but with a lot of experience, who are working with this environmental and zoning group called AKRF that has an office in White Plains, and Hudson Valley Pattern for Progress, which is based in Newburgh, but does work throughout the entire Hudson Valley. So they came in with a bid of $250,000 for that. Of that $250,000, we were able to successfully receive a $75,000 grant from New York State, Empire State Development Corporation, and the rest is through the city, through approval by City Council, and it's over the course of 2 years to execute this process, and that encompasses everything for the comprehensive plan. Does that make sense? Was I clear? Both. So her team was hired in November after we had to go through a couple of rounds of it. So she has already been paid for the part of the first phase, and then the bulk of it will be in 2023 and possibly residual in 2024. But we have identified through, if you want to look at the budget under planning, outside contracting services. And so that's going to cover all our outside contracts.
In my community I was born in, I'm just hoping that we don't get screwed. When I talk about getting screwed, we didn't, me as a person that's been attending the city council meetings since 1976, I see the city has gotten screwed so much in the taxpayers, so I'm hoping this will happen. I know under Clinton administration, we were close to a comprehensive plan, but it didn't happen. So I'm hoping, with our mayor here that, it'll go through, because this city does need so much work. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for that. And when I saw some hands raised about have you gone through a comprehensive planning process, it's because I know some of y'all were here for the one that happened around 2009 through 2011 and was not adopted. We're going to make sure that unfortunate incident does not happen again. In the very least, it's one reason why we're phasing it. You have a very dedicated and energetic city council here who's devoted to making sure that happens, and you have folks with a lot of community engagement, community outreach experience, and planning experience working on a community level.
So I'm just going to go through some slides quickly. A lot of what's up here, the commissioner actually shared in his introduction, but we just want to provide a little bit of context, and then we want to move straight into the activities, because the goal of this meeting is to hear from you all, so we'll get to that. So very simply, the comprehensive plan is meant to be a long-term blueprint, right? It's meant to be the guide to let us know what are the kinds of resources, policies, and actions that we should be taking to make decisions over the next 10 years and beyond when it comes to housing, when it comes to jobs and supporting local businesses, when it comes to making decisions around green and open spaces, investing in our infrastructure, the kind of city services that the city provides, and a lot more. So this is really meant to be the guide that we co-create together to say, this is where we want to go, and these are the things that we want to focus on, and this is what it's going to take for us to get there. And we know that all of the things I just named, right, impact us as people, and it also impacts the built environment. So not only might you be impacted because it impacts the kinds of housing opportunities that you have for your family, or the kinds of jobs that you might want to access locally, or what you need to grow your business. It's also going to change what the city itself looks like, right? What it looks like when you walk down the street or drive down the street. And so our conversations are really going to be a balance of really thinking about, again, policies and programs, but also the physical infrastructure and how we decide that we want that to be shaped and look over the next 10 years and beyond. So you have this slide in front of you as well, and this is meant to be a bit of an overview of the project timeline. So as the commissioner shared, the hope is really to wrap this process up in 18 months to 2 years, just depending on how we move through it. We want to be efficient, but we also want to be intentional, and so we're going to make space for that. The blue timeline here really shows both internal and external exercises. So you will see we have outreach and engagement as an ongoing process that we're going to just provide as many different opportunities as possible. So this series of community conversations, we're at the first one today. We have 1 of 8 between now and March. And in terms of outreach, we've provided flyers to our advisory committee, which are 46 members of the city that represent different organizations, committees, neighborhood associations, and we've asked them to reach out to their networks. We've dropped off flyers at the library, at the Dole Center. We've dropped off flyers at different businesses. We've put it on social media, and we've really just encouraged people to not only show up and participate, but also to share with their neighbors. And we're going to continue to, be as thoughtful as possible to make sure that we're reaching as many people in the city as possible over the next 2 years. You also see called out public workshops, and so these community conversations between now and March are going to inform the first city public workshop in April. And that's going to be a citywide conversation where we'll be able to share back everything that comes up in these conversations, and also research and analysis that the consultant will begin to do to get a sense of our existing conditions, which is basically, where are we now? When we talk about the local economy, what kinds of jobs are available, what kind of businesses do we have, what incomes, right, do people have here, what are the different housing opportunities. So that's really meant to be a baseline assessment to get a sense of where we are, and that then becomes a foundation to have an understanding of where we want to go and what the gaps might be. And so that's work that will also be presented at that city workshop. And again, we'll continue to iterate, focus on the downtown and really creating a framework for that in the first phase, and then continuing to deepen our conversations, focus on the rest of the city, building on that in 9 months. And then part of what we also want to get out of this process is zoning recommendations. And so when we talk about where we have housing and where businesses can go and where we commit to having green space and how tall our buildings can be, we want to be able to make those decisions and then update our zoning code to be able to support where we want to go and how we want to grow as a city. And so there's going to be a lot of opportunities to kind of go deeper into what this all will look like, but those are just some of the highlights in terms of the kinds of conversations and the kinds of research we're really looking for a consultant to do. So with that, I want to move us into our first activity. And we're going to start with visioning, right? So tonight we're going to kind of start a bit broad, and then we're going to get a little bit more specific when it comes to your challenges and concerns, but also ideas around a set of areas, and again, with a particular focus on downtown because of the phase that we are in. But before we kind of talk about where we are and where we want to go, I think it's helpful just to think about what is the Mount Vernon that we actually want for ourselves, right? If I wake up 10 years from today and get out of bed and walk down the street, what do I want to see, right? What kind of store do I want to walk into? How do I want to feel when I cross the street and see my neighbors, right? So really, what's the vision for where we want to go? And again, we know that everyone has a different experience, and so part of our work is really to hear from you all individually about what those visions are, and then do the work of coalescing that and synthesizing that so we can say, hey, we collectively want to move in this direction, and this is the kind of city we want in the next 10, 20, 30 years and beyond. So with that, I'm going to ask everyone just to take 60 seconds, 2 minutes, and just think for yourself. When you think about your vision for Mount Vernon, when you think about what you want Mount Vernon to look like in the next 10 or 20 years, what comes to mind for you? So we're going to start, the question was, are we concentrating on downtown? We're just going to start for the city as a whole, just to think big and broad, yeah, and then we'll focus on downtown for the next activity. Yes. So the request is to take the purple sticky notes, because that'll help us organize all of these notes. And again, we're going to collect everything at the end of the meeting to make sure we capture everything. And again, just take 2 minutes, write down in a few words what your vision is for the city, and then we'll make some space for folks to share that with the group. No need to write your name. If you'd like to, that's great, but it can be anonymous. Yes. Is everyone clear on the activity? Any questions? Anything that's purple. All right, so we'll give you 2 minutes. Think about your vision. And then we'll make some space to hear some of those ideas out loud. So we're gonna make some space now, maybe for 5 minutes. If anyone wants to share their vision with the group, raise your hand, I'll come to you. Again, we're gonna collect all of these, so we'll make sure to capture all of the notes and get that to the consultant. But if anyone wants to share their vision with the full group, raise your hand. If you want to share your vision out loud with the group. You do? Okay, we'll start here. In just 30 seconds or less. Yes, please.
My vision is to see retail stores, a stronger tax base, and to leave the homeowners alone, because these homeowners, especially senior citizens, they're already burdened. So that's my thing. Retail stores, a stronger tax base, and leave these homeowners alone because they didn't suffer enough. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, I'd like to see plenty of parking in whatever developments or further planning goes on. Parking is critical. I think we need to be sure that we preserve and increase the amount of green space, particularly if we're going into high-rise development. There has to be green space, even if it's on top of the building. It's okay. People need to be outside. I think we need to keep an eye on the density that we have. Overcrowding leads to antisocial behavior. We need to assure that our infrastructure is adequate to support whatever it is that we select to do. Improve the tax base, like she said, so that it's not on us poor folk. Concern for shadowing by having too high buildings over our neighborhoods that are already existing. I'd like to see us maintain the beautiful neighborhoods that we have and concentrate our high-rise only in the transit-oriented developments and areas that we designate for the higher density, which should be TODs, in my opinion. I'd like to see bike paths, a concern for walkability, and community Wi-Fi.
I'd like to see more safe spaces for children and teenagers, more green spaces for healthier food and drinks. Someone else mentioned this as well, but more stores of convenience, less dollar stores, more actual clothing options, and better looking infrastructure to make the city look more appealing and brighter to outsiders.
Thank you. Maybe one more? I see one more hand. Great.
I have some similar items, but more green space, less density within the city, vibrant downtown and Gramerton Avenue retail center, with it being more walkable, more restaurants, maybe some music venues, but nightlife, and limiting building heights throughout the city, 4, 6, 8 stories max.
Thank you. So as you can hear, right, there are some similar themes around green spaces, around considering density, around more retail. And so the goal, right, is that we know that there's a diversity of ideas, but we know that there's also a lot of priorities that you will have that are similar. And so we hope to continue to surface those in the next activity. So now we're going to go a little bit more specifically into thinking about challenges, opportunities, and priorities. And to kind of provide a little bit of a focus, we're going to provide a few kind of buckets from which you might think about those challenges and those opportunities. And so this is when we're going to be talking about the downtown, right? So I know we don't have enough maps, and I apologize for that if folks are comfortable sharing. But when we talk about the downtown in terms of the proposed kind of scope, it's really North Ave behind City Hall, kind of all the way east toward Mount Vernon East train station and North Fulton Ave, south down toward East 4th, and up north toward Hartley Park. So really trying to kind of create an area where we're saying, phase 1, this is where we want to focus. And so our next activity, we're going to ask you to think about challenges and opportunities when it comes to open space and parks, transportation and mobility, housing, and businesses. And if there's something else that maybe is really important to you that does not follow in that topic, that's okay. You can flag that as well. And so you might notice the different colored Post-it notes at your table because we want to try our best to organize by those colors. So I'll repeat this a few times. Let's see if we can try our best. And for those who don't have all the colors, because I know toward the back we're running out of materials, just write down what this pertains to. But use the yellow sticky notes for anything related to housing. So yellow equals housing. If you have any challenges or ideas related to businesses, use the pink notes. Transportation, use the blue. And this is an easy one, open space and parks, use the green. So, yeah, yellow for housing. Pink is businesses. Blue is transportation, and green is open spaces and parks. And if you don't have all the colors, just write down the idea. This is just our way of organizing your notes so we can capture everything effectively. So our next activity is going to happen in 3 parts. And we're similarly going to take a few minutes and just ask you to quietly gather your thoughts, pick an area or 2 that is important to you, and identify what is a challenge or an issue when you think about housing, and particularly when you think about housing in the downtown area. If you are really passionate about businesses or thinking about the local economy, what is a challenge or an issue that's important for us to raise? And similarly, so pick 1 or 2 topics, anything that you feel excited about or is important to you, and think about a challenge or an issue. I'll come to your question. And then think about an opportunity or a priority. So maybe there's a challenge around there is no housing and we have this train, and maybe that's a good place to put housing. So let's say that the challenge is that we need more housing downtown. Maybe the opportunity is for us to think about transit-oriented development, like someone mentioned earlier. And we recognize, right, we're not going to have all the answers for everything tonight, but it's really just an opportunity for us to think about both challenges, but also assets and opportunities that we might be able to kind of grow over time. So we're going to do that quietly. Then we're going to move into a group discussion, and then we're going to share back with the full group. So before I continue with the instructions, I saw a few hands, so I want to make sure that the instructions are clear. And apologies for my use of the mic. Any questions about the first part of the activity? All right, so yes, right now just take a few minutes, write down on an issue that you care about or is important to you, what's a challenge or concern you have, and if you have any ideas around an opportunity or a priority, you can capture that as well. So we're gonna give you a few minutes, and then we're gonna share the next part of the exercise, which is gonna include you speaking to your neighbors about what's important to you. Any clarifying questions? Okay. Conversations have begun, so I'm gonna share the next piece of this activity. So now I'm gonna ask you to do two things. The first is, at your table, identify a note taker and someone who is going to be comfortable reporting back what comes out of your conversations. And the ask is for you all just to have a conversation. What came up for you when it came to the challenges? What kinds of ideas around what's possible did you brainstorm when you were writing quietly? And just have that discussion with yourself. And then the ask is for the note taker is to capture what's similar, right? There might be several of you who have really great ideas around what it looks like to think about unique retail stores that we can bring to Mount Vernon that make it a destination, as someone named over here. There might be other ideas around investing in green spaces, but we want to start capturing some of the similarities. And so, again, for the next 10 minutes, speak with your table, share what came up for you in terms of challenges and opportunities, and whomever is comfortable being the note taker, just capture in particular what the similarities were. What are some of the ideas that were the same? We are going to take all of your sticky notes, so even if you have very diverse and specific ideas, we're gonna make sure that we take those at the end of the meeting. But let's start capturing what came up that is the same, and then we'll share back with the full group in 10 minutes. All right, so we wanna be respectful of time. We wanna try to wrap up around 8 like we promised. So we wanna be respectful of time and wanna aim to wrap up around 8 o'clock. Yes. But we do want to hear what you all discuss. So what we're going to do is ask one person from each group to do a quick summary. So in 1 to 2 minutes, just share what were some of the challenges and concerns that you all discussed, and what were some of the ideas or priorities that you thought we really need to be considering when we think about the downtown in particular. So again, we're going to collect all of your notes. We know we're not going to get to everything, but we're going to capture everything. We're going to write everything up and synthesize it. It's not going to get lost. But we want to make sure that we at least hear from every table. So take 10 seconds if you haven't already, and make sure you have a designated speaker for your table if you haven't done that already. I see some fingers pointing. And I think I'm going to start in the back, actually, and make my way forward. And again, just 1 to 2 minutes, a brief summary of some of the challenges and concerns that were discussed at your table, and any ideas around priorities and opportunities that we can consider moving forward. So I'm going to start all the way back here. Who is your spokesperson? All right, let's keep it to 1 to 2 minutes for everyone, just because we want to make sure that we hear from the full group. So, Mr. Thomas.
Okay. So at our table, we were discussing the issue of housing, and one of the concerns was that there was too much concentrated low-income housing in Mount Vernon. We wanted to see more diversified housing, economically based, and more mixed-use housing. It was also said that we should have a moratorium on storage facilities. We talked about opportunities, and we were looking at one of our new facilities, which is Memorial Field. And we were saying that this could be an economic engine for the entire city in the area of entertainment. It could even be an educational orientation where we can begin to filter in our young people to learn how to do facilities management. They would learn things about the hospitality industry, and that would be something that we can attract people and integrate this with economic opportunities throughout the rest of the city. One of our other residents spoke about entertainment, talked about restaurants. There's a conceptual way to connect all of that with the memorial field being the center for such. And I would say, this is just my own, I didn't discuss this with you all. We got a 40-plus-year-old jazz institution here in Mount Vernon that very few people know about. It's 40-plus years. And it brings international jazz artists into Mount Vernon. And that particular group of people have an international connection that they bring to Mount Vernon every time that they have a jam session. We need to tap situations like that and integrate them into economic possibility. It's PJS Jazz, which has been operating out of First Presbyterian Church. I don't want to necessarily highlight that in the sense that we have a lot of rich resources in Mount Vernon. We need to be able to identify them and capitalize on them. You know, I would say the School for Performing Arts has already demonstrated that. And then there was just one last one about a home owner incentive for our civil and municipal service force, that we want to try to work out something to identify those individuals that we would want to be a foundation for our population in Mount Vernon, people who have lived here, worked here, and that we want to keep them here. I think that was it. Okay.
All right, who is the spokesperson for this team? Great, thank you. You are very organized.
So we have a lot of different things, so I guess I'll start with housing. And I'm speaking on a South Side resident perspective as well. So we said there's too much loitering on the outside, too many buildings, which leads to too much crime. We also need better street lighting on some of the streets as well. Make affordable housing for mid-income families and educate residents on housing availability or how to obtain mortgages. Transportation-wise, we asked for better taxi services, possibly continuing free transportation services such as the Beeline buses, trolleys, trains, etc. More adequate taxi services with the possibility of like an app creation, somewhat like Uber. More seating at the bus stops for elderly people. As far as downtown and businesses, proper awning for retail stores. We have too many of the same types of businesses, so maybe opening more of an option and opportunity for other businesses. Security is an issue for the downtown area, possibly having patrol cars in areas throughout times of dusk. More Black-owned businesses within the community, more business opportunities so that people can shop within the city of Mount Vernon and not have to go outside somewhere else to get what they need. More green space opportunities such as walking, bike trails, community gardens, recycling or compost areas, more appealing infrastructure, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. That was very thorough. All right. Next table, Carla.
At my table, we talked a lot about about downtown and the how's it said, the businesses specifically, and how we could make it better for the community. So we could have like a banquet or a center that can hold event spaces, because I noticed that a lot of time when we want to hold an event for maybe, there's that one event for the firehouse, and we all ended up going to that park right off of Gramerton. And we should have like a better space for everyone to, everyone in the community to come together for whatever reason, and maybe make it easier for, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting most of the points that we had. We had a lot of good points. Yeah.
So I think she was talking about more of, Curtis has mentioned, having more of an event space, more integrated with a hotel to actually house more banquets. Most people, a lot of time when they want to do maybe something larger or they go to New Rochelle, they go to a surf club, they go to all these things. So I think he was speaking specifically about those types of spaces. We also talked about having a restaurant row where you can have more arts and culture and entertainment. Normally, if you're going to build affordable homes and we want market rate homes also. That's essential for our tax base. We don't want to forget, affordable homes, but we want market space with mixed use, with restaurants, arts and entertainment. You want music. You want different foods. You necessarily want foods that everybody already have here. We want to attract foods for monies and income to come from outside of Mount Vernon. We have Bronxville, we have Pelham, we have all these people. We want those dollars to come into to our city. We talked about also providing public Wi-Fi in the downtown area to kind of address the technology divide. Some bike spaces for people to actually commute using bike spaces versus driving, and near the train lines, so that not only people commuting to work can just get right on the train, but Mount Vernon residents can actually use those, and we address the health and equity issues, right? Let's see. We talked about also having, again, I touched on music, arts, culture. What else? Anything else I'm forgetting? Yep. I think Shane's point, he mentioned reclaiming properties that was Mount Vernon. I think specifically you talked about what, Gloverfield?
Gloverfield and Scoutsfield.
And Scoutsfield. Those were spaces that were Mount Vernon. So reclaiming those spaces for our own use. And I think, did I miss anything, guys? We talked about also, I mean, you can't leave any stone unturned. We talked about charging for vehicles. We have to see the vision. Like I said, we are right around Pelham, Bronxville. We have the discretionary incomes in the area, and we have it here in Mount Vernon also. There's professionals in Mount Vernon, so we need to start looking at sustainable ways to attract those type of dollars. So in a nutshell, that's what we
Thank you. All right, let's try to keep it to 2 minutes so we can get through the rest of the tables, but thank you for all of these ideas. Who is your spokesperson?
Good evening. We spoke about, in terms of green space, maintaining all of our green space, and truly the upkeep of the trees. I know they have arborists, but to make sure that the green spaces are upkept. Transparency with this upkeep of the green spaces. So maybe a website so that you can see the schedule, so that they're on one part of town, they're going to go on another part, and so you can see when you're going to be, serviced next. Not whenever the tree falls on your car or your house or something like that. And we do need more green spaces. For housing, we talked about the affordability of housing, and having affordable housing, maybe having a sliding scale, to make it so that people can afford the housing. Low interest loans or grants for residents, for especially our seniors, so they can update their homes, for more protective equipment, ramps, maybe some lighting, so that they can stay safely within their homes. Knock down some of these really derelict and abandoned homes, you can make some green space out of there, maybe even some parking. And having a program, which I know that Mount Vernon did for a while, I'm not sure if it still exists, so that people can purchase the homes that, others who are leaving the city, their homes stay open for so long, and you go up and down the blocks and it's home for sale, home for sale, home for sale. So maybe having a program to help people to be able to afford to stay and encourage them to stay within Mount Vernon. When we talked about businesses, we talked about, how the homeowners and the businesses, the tax, we're really holding up Mount Vernon. We were promised so many things. So we would like more diversity in our businesses. As we talked earlier, other people said, different kinds of venues, cafes, small shops. I say fitness center with a pool. Not a Wilson's Wood pool, but a real pool for adults. Music venues. Did I miss anything with the businesses? Oh, and I'll check out the tax bases for the businesses. On the walkways, yeah, and the walkways, better lighting, and attractiveness for the outside of our businesses, and really, like, I know we have the concrete, but paved, like a village atmosphere, because we really are a large village. Okay, now transportation. Oh, okay, transportation, the parking, as we talked to the gentleman behind us, talked about parking and being on the fringes of Pelham and having people come into Mount Vernon to park and not live here, they need to pay. And maybe having a shuttle to bring people on the fringes in, because people on the fringes, they're not coming to the adult center. So maybe, one of those Choo-Choo Charlie shuttles or some way to bring people in.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna go to this table next. Who is your spokesperson?
Hi, everybody. So we didn't get to many topics, but we had a good conversation about housing and how it's important to make sure that the housing that's built is workforce affordable, so folks can actually afford it. We also talked about mixed-use housing. One of the challenges right now in the downtown area is everything's very blocky. You've got a lot of blocks that are just gray and unattractive, and the people who live in buildings don't have places to really socialize. There's not a lot of courtyards. There's not a lot of open space. So mixed-use housing with a variety of amenities, courtyards, green spaces, where people can get to know each other. It's a little bit like the Jane Jacobs book, The Life and Death of Great American Cities. People sitting in a courtyard is a way to brighten up a city. And we talked about green spaces and how things like medians and planters can make a city visually attractive and therefore encourage shopping and people to visit, and making sure that those medians or planters are a community project, like recruit volunteers who may live in an apartment building, don't have a garden, but want to enjoy the benefits of a garden. They can make it a community project. Community space is everyone's space by definition, and it really improves relationships and mental health in a city.
Thank you. So we talked about housing challenges, transportation, and businesses. I also want to say I'm just really happy that we had such a large turnout tonight. So thank you everyone who came out. Thank you. With housing, we talked about more affordable housing, not for residents of Westchester, but residents of Mount Vernon. Artist housing, more green housing as well, and housing that is responsive to climate change, because climate change is real. In terms of challenges, we talked about our infrastructure, both the sewer infrastructure and our electric grid being weak spots. Transportation, we talked about having a jitney service that's downtown, that's free, that would allow you to go to different parts of downtown, similar to New Rochelle. Better transportation for seniors, bike lanes and better crosswalks, as well as, again, more green transportation such as e-bikes, scooters, and EV stations. Businesses, co-working spaces, coffee shops, healthier businesses, uniform signage, more walkability, popular restaurants, and also the advent of more Airbnb facilities to help homeowners that need help with rents. And those were our comments. Thanks.
I believe some of the things that we talked about were, we believe we have a small knit community here, but we lack culture. And one of the things that we discussed about establishing a culture is providing the youth and children with more creative opportunities and spaces so they can burn off all the energy like we used to do when we were kids, and also give them opportunities to actually come outside. We know that today's children are more technology driven, but if we had spaces where they can actually go and do those activities together amongst other children, where parents actually had a membership of some sort to send them, we think that would be very beneficial. Outdoor dining, providing venues for music, arts, and entertainment. We also mentioned having cafes, outdoor dinings, and green space opportunities as well. I know someone else mentioned that, community gardens, where we actually harvest our own vegetables and things of that nature. We also talked about creating home ownership opportunities. Multiple summer breeze events we also had on the list. I think someone else mentioned the e-scooters and the trolley, a local trolley that would, I think someone else mentioned that would actually travel locally throughout the city, free as well. And more townhouses. We don't want to make the city more dense, so we want mixed use, like limited heights, as mentioned earlier. And that's it. Thank you, guys.
All right, 3 more tables. Who is going to report back from here? Thank you.
Okay, we were kind of productive. So on the transportation, fixing the roads, walking paths, bike lanes, and connecting the bike lanes from Bronxville to Pelham, we should be able to traverse the city on bicycles safely. Speak with the county and the city should get together and look at our bus line schedules. Some of the bus lines at the end of my street in particular, they end really early, like at 9:30 at night. And I mean, you could barely get home from cross county, but if you're a working person, you need a later bus than that. And are the buses running in the best possible places for our community? Because that could be changed without a huge amount of problem. We must have more parking and more parking and more parking. We think that it would be good to look into some kind of park and ride lot so that people could easily use mass transit into the city. We think that the Mount Vernon train station lot should be for Mount Vernon residents. In housing, we really feel that, especially those of us on the south side, you have to find a solution for the homeless. I mean, it's really terrible in some spots. We'd like to see the ADU process improved, or the having ADUs approved for the city. We have a lot of multifamily homes with aging populations. It would be nice if we can have the elderly in smaller units with families. Improve enforcement of violations. For example, individual properties that are single families being used as multis. Those properties are not being taxed as multis, yet sometimes there are 2, 3, and 4 families living in there and they're paying a single family rate. Other people are paying the multi rate because they're in compliance. We'd like the building department to work extremely hard on improving the rate of turnaround for permits so that people can get their stuff fixed in a timely manner and they will be willing to be compliant because they will be having a responsive building department. We're wondering if there could be looked at for grants for home improvements. It could be solicited, particularly, I mean, you could have whatever criteria you want, people that have lived here 15 years, owner-occupied multis, whatever you want, but there are, senior citizens, people with an income below XYZ, but can there be some grants for home improvement? Is there an incentive for owner-occupied multi? I lived in a community where if you had a 3-family and it wasn't owner-occupied, it wasn't going to be a 3-family anymore. They wanted owner-occupied because those properties are normally taken care of better than absentee landlords. So either a credit for owner-occupied multis or an increased tax for owner-occupied or some disincentive for people coming in, buying up our houses cheap and filling them up with poor people who have no options. Stop the dump of the county problems into our community. We have to put our foot down. We have to get much faster on acting on homes that have been abandoned or fire damaged or are decrepit. And don't build to the sidewalk. Those big buildings, they need to have a little breathing space. As far as business goes, we'd like to see a concentration of businesses at the TODs, the transit-oriented developments. We'd like to see an increase in the diversity of businesses. We'd like to see more restaurants, more music, more theater, both community or commercial, varied commerce, and then again, parking. Because if these buildings are going to be if these businesses are going to be sustainable, they need to be able to have their clients come without a huge hassle. If I have to drive around a block 10 times and I can't find a parking place, I go home. So that really hurts the businesses. Open spaces. We have a lack of open space for cultural and artistic activities. We'd like to beautify Mount Vernon. We'd like to have multiple spaces with room for multiple activities, space for gardens, senior activities, barbecues, family outings like they have in Wilson Woods. Exercise routes in the park. Connect the bike paths, Bronxville, Pelham, and the walking. Solar chargers outside, and our park should be used for Mount Vernon residents. Other communities do restrict access. And one amusing anecdote, a friend moved here and saw the bike path in Bronxville and said to me, "Do you see how many emergency phones they have along that? That must be a very unsafe community." And I said, "Well, it's actually a very old community." So.
All right, 2 more tables and then we're going to wrap up.
So on our housing, we said when they build these buildings, because I know they built one on McQuestion Avenue and one down near Mount Vernon Avenue, the quality it's just unbelievable. They need to have some quality builders come in here for Mount Vernon and not just put up, "Thank you, ma'am," who did it and ran. Horrible. And then when they build these buildings, they need ample parking for not only the residents, but people, you have elderly people, young people come to visit. Where do they park? The one on McQuestion Parkway, you have to park about 5 or 6, 7 blocks down to go see someone. For the challenges, we feel that for health service, that upgrade Mount Vernon Hospital. Why should we have to continue to go to Bronxville, New Rochelle, White Plains when there's an emergency and we have a hospital right here? As far as back at housing, you need to define the difference with affordable and low income. Yes. Because there's a difference. Because we keep getting low income, that's what we're going to get, low income. And that's why 4th Avenue looks like 4th Avenue. So it's got to be a definition about what's affordable and what's low income. As far as transportation, get rid of the abandoned cars. But also, you have to reconsider to rerouting some of the streets. Design new traffic patterns. Because back in the day, we had less cars. But now, one of the streets around the corner from me, Grandview, it's a two-way traffic. You can't even get through there. It's horrible. So that should be reconsidered. I know they did it years ago with 5th Street down in the Heights, 4th Street. That's something that needs to be considered again to really accommodate, because now not only the parents are driving, the kids are driving. So you need to think about, new traffic patterns. For greener spaces, we want more trees. However, cut down the dead trees. We have a dead tree on Farrell and Hillside that's been there since the summer. We've been asking them to cut down. One tree on Brookside fell on someone's car. Now this one, it's just a matter of time, so they need to cut down the dead trees. They need better lighting here in Mount Vernon, better lighting. We need more receptacles for garbage, but when the receptacles are filled, they need to be emptied. They need to be emptied. They need to enforce the rule for the dog poop. No one wants to keep coming outside walking in dog poop. They have a rule, there's a fine here for that. I don't think anybody in Mount Vernon has ever gotten a fine. for not cleaning up their dog poo. And I agree with the one for community gardens down there. For businesses, we want more upscale stores. Years ago, many of you are younger, but we had Janun's, we had Barrett Stationery. We really had some really some nice quality stores that we could go to. No more dollar. Dollar has to go. We need better eateries. And for the youth, we used to have a bowling alley here in Mount Vernon, a skating rink, a movie theater. Where's all of that? These youth, they need something. They need something. And I think that was it, right? Did we have any more? We probably had more, but that's enough.
All right, last but not least.
Thank you. With our group, we talked about developing a strategy to encourage people who live in Mount Vernon to open businesses and to provide incentives for those businesses to stay here. More activities for children. The entire city needs a makeover. Transportation from schools needs to be improved, especially Mount Vernon High School, where the kids from the South End have to travel a long way to get to school. Fixing the sidewalks, fixing the potholes, fixing the infrastructure, especially the sewers. And we would like to see a city that is not divided by the tracks. We'd like to see one city, and we have to strive to have at least an 85% graduation rate from high school.
All right, can we give ourselves a round of applause for all of these amazing ideas? Obviously, a lot of similar challenges came up, a lot of really awesome themes around, I heard bike shares, investing in programs to help homeowners who want to stay to actually stay, diversifying the types of entertainment and retail that we have, having mixed use, and I know there's a lot more in all of the stickies, so thank you all again for taking the time to write down your ideas and to share them with everyone. I'm gonna turn it over to Marlon and James, and we're gonna close out. We know we've had you here for a long time, and we really hope that you benefited from being able to be in conversation with your neighbors to hear both what you all have in common and what's important to you, but also maybe learn something new about what's possible.
So thank you, everyone. When we were walking around the tables, we saw a lot of notes. So that's a lot of information that we are going to share with the consultant. Their job will be to sort of put that together, categorize it, organize it, so that when we come back together for the public meeting, you'll be able to assess, all right, that's what we talked about, we agree with this, we don't agree with this. So there's gonna be an opportunity to refine all of these ideas, and that's part of all of the conversations. So, this is the first one. We got 7 more conversations to go. And, it was interesting that, the last comment was about the sewers and the infrastructure. And as some of you heard, there's supposed to be some money coming around for that. But as we go to different parts of Mount Vernon, we're gonna hear more and more. But by the time we come together, we're gonna be able to see what different parts of Mount Vernon are concerned about. We're gonna be able to see what different age groups of Mount Vernon are concerned about. And also, that's part of the whole process. So coming back, again, please, for the next, I believe that the next workshop is gonna be on Saturday, right, the 28th. So if you know your neighbors, or if please let them know that it's coming. In the spring, so we talked about it's going to be the first public workshop where we're going to, the consultant is going to provide the first draft. It's also important to know that the planning department, that the consultant is an independent consultant, so they're going to be taking everyone's ideas and presenting them to the community so the community can say, I agree or I don't agree. Okay, if you didn't sign in the beginning, please make sure that you sign in before you leave. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to our planning department. Our phone number is 914-840-4029. And we're happy, if you have any comments, you can still submit them. I believe we're going to put together an email, but we're going to tell you that for a minute. So I'm going to bring back Commissioner Rouse.
So the only thing I wanted to say is, wow, thank you. You've made this kickoff wonderful for us, and I say this truthfully. You know, all of y'all came to an agreement about how we were going to run this meeting, and in all my years, ranging from my hometown of the Bronx, right over the border, all the way to work I did in India, I've never seen a group so respectful, informed, and the positive energy that I was talking about before, even when we were complaining about something. So I think we're off to a great start here. Just before we finish up, there's a few more people I wanted to acknowledge. Councilmember Copeland came in and out before, so I don't think she's here now. Yes, AC may acknowledge Councilmember Thompson. Director of Constituent Services Eric Crump was here. I forgot to acknowledge our city engineer Curtis Woods there, and a big round of applause to the woman behind the wall, our executive secretary Tamika Graham-Otara, who helped sign you in and helped set us up as well. And a big round of applause for all of you, as you know, because as I said, this was a great kickoff. You know, I said first of many community conversations in multiple phases for this process, and I hope to see some of you again on February 28th, location TBD. We're busy securing. January, my fault. January 28th. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm eager, but January 28th, we will keep everyone informed. You know, we're finalizing a website soon to keep everyone informed of the process. And if I see you on January 28th, I hope you bring some more of your neighbors, because we want to see more folks out, because as I said, this was a great first step. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Hello, everyone. Please make sure you leave the notes in the middle of the table, and we'll pick them up. Thank you. All right, so in case you didn't hear, please leave your notes, your sticky notes, in the middle of the table. We'll pick them up. Thank you.